This is Teresa with My Crochet Obsession, and today I'm going to show you how I crochet vinkas and periwinkles. Now, as you crochet along with me in this 30 Days of Flower series, you're going to discover that once you learn the different stitch sizes and how to create the different centers, that most flowers have the same basic shapes. So you'll want to choose the correct colors of how these flowers appear in nature when you're trying to communicate a specific flower. What makes vinkas and periwinkles distinctive is the flower center. It has a little bit of a star shape, and I'm going to show you how we'll crochet to accent that star shape. Another characteristic of vinkas, well, at least here in Texas anyway, is they come in certain colors. Now, the periwinkle, of course, you'll want to choose a shade of bluish violet, and they also appear here in Texas in a hot pink or a white or a baby pink. Anytime you're trying to communicate a specific flower, your color choice may be the determining factor in what makes the flower different from any other, say, 5-petal or 6-petal flower. Some vinkas have petals that overlap, as I have done here in this dark purple one. And I'll be showing you how to make this overlapping effect that's kind of like a whirl. Some vinkas have pointed petals. And if you've done some of my other flowers that have a picot on the petal, then you'll understand what I mean when we get there. I'm using regular worsted weight number 4 yarn for my stash, some scraps. You remember that part of the goal in this 30 Days of Flower series is that I'm going to be using my small amounts of scraps that I have in my stash. I'm also using a 4.5 millimeter crochet hook today because these flowers are very small. In fact, these flower prototypes that I've already made, they're actually bigger than the actual flower appears in nature. So I'm going to demonstrate the remaining flowers today in the 4.5 millimeter. Here you can see how small this flower actually is, but still it's larger than they actually appear in nature. And of course, as we go along, you will need a pair of scissors and a yarn needle. You can see here that these flowers are about 2 inches, 2¼ inches. And so I'm going to attempt to make smaller flowers as we go forward. And a couple of more observations before we get going. They're a great flower for lots of different applications. This one in particular, when I've made it and put it on shawls and neck warmers, I only attach the center, and that way the flowers have a little 3D effect. And finally, before we pick up our yarn and our crochet hook, let's take a look at some vinkas and periwinkles that I found on a seed packet. Note the centers and the way the petals are arranged, as well as the petal shapes. In my crochet, when I'm trying to communicate a specific flower, I note these things and try to replicate them in my crocheting. Enough talk, let's crochet vinkas. You'll need 2 different colors of yarn, one for your flower center and one for your petals. I'm going to start with my hot rose, my hot pink, and I'm going to begin with a slip knot on my hook. And this center needs to be as small as possible. So I'm going to chain up 3. 1, 2, 3, and back into the first chain, pull up a loop and single crochet. I'm going to give myself a little bit of fudge room there with a single crochet. Chain 2 and back into the ring, single crochet. Now back, chain 1 that first one, the first chain counts as the single crochet, and then we need one chain. Chain one and single crochet back into the ring. Oops, I got through a loop. This is a little fidgety to get going. And like I said, if I didn't have number 4 weight yarn, it would be easier. And chain one and single crochet into the ring. Now that opening is opened more and I can get in there. All right, now we've got 3 chain spaces. We need 5 total. So chain one and single crochet again into the ring. That's 4 chain spaces, so now we're going to chain one and go into that first chain space with a slip stitch. And now we're going to chain one again and pull up a loop. Clip the yarn, pull up that loop, and pull it back to the back. Alrighty. Now then, we have a small ring, and I'm going to, I crocheted over the yarn end, and now I'm going to pull it as tightly closed as I can. It may pop open, but then while I'm making the flower, but I'll use my yarn needle whenever I get done in order to fix that problem. Alrighty, now we're done with the petal color. Let's come in with the center color. Let's come in with our petal color now. With your preferred method, place a slip knot on your hook. Insert into one of the chain spaces that we created in this ring. Into one of the chain spaces. And pull up a loop and slip stitch. I'm not going to, I could single crochet if it was a different petal, but this chain space isn't very big, and I need 5 stitches in that to create my petal. So chain 2. Remember, this is a little flower, but if you were making a larger 5-petal flower and you wanted this star effect, and you start this way, and then you could even do trebles if you wanted it bigger, or even taller stitches than that. But for this little vinca, I'm going to chain only 2 and back into that same chain space, double crochet 3, and it's going to be tight, but that's what I want. Here's our 3 double crochet. Now chain 2 and slip stitch into the same chain space. Whoop, sorry. Let's do that again. It's a little fiddly because it's so small. All right. All right. Now, I'm going to pull up a loop. Actually, I'm going to chain one first. Chain one and pull up a loop. And I'm going to go into that next chain space, and I'm going to pull that loop in from behind. And the reason for that is that's how I get the definition of the little star on the front, is because instead of bringing this loop over to here, it would cover this up and then it would be round. So I'm taking my loop in from the back, and you can see the way this flower looks on the back. You can see the way I brought that loop and pulled it through to the front and then started my stitches. And that's how we get that accent on our 5 points for our star. Pull that loop in from the back. Now, we did chain one, but don't pull the chain through, so don't make it too tight. Just pull the loop through, chain 2, and 3 double crochet into that same chain space. Chain 2 and slip stitch into the same chain space to complete that petal. Let's chain 1 again and pull up that loop and insert the hook into that next chain space and pull this loop over and pull it through to the front so we can begin to make our petal. Remember, just pull the loop through, don't pull the chain space through. It doesn't need to be that tight. Chain 2, and 3 double crochet into the same chain space. And chain 2, two more times. Oh, you know what I did? I went over a chain space there. I pulled that through the wrong chain space. I knew it. I saw I was missing one. I was only going to have 4 petals. All right, let's go back and fix that. I'm not going to edit this out because you know what? That could happen to you too. You have to frog that back because we got to have a 5-petal flower. I don't even know if there are 4 petals. Oh yeah, the dogwood has 4 petals. All right, pull that loop up, chain 2, and 3 double crochet into that chain space. Chain 2 and slip stitch into that same chain space again. Repeat the pattern for the next petal. Chain 1, pull up a loop, insert the hook into the next chain space, and pull that loop through to the front. Chain 2, double crochet 3 times. Chain 2, slip stitch, chain 1, pull up the loop, insert the hook into the front of the chain space, pull the loop through to the front, gentle, not too tight, chain 2, 3 double crochet, chain 2, and slip stitch. Now even for this last petal, I'm going to chain 1 again, and I'm going to turn that first petal over, and I'm going to slip stitch to finish off my petal. I'm going to slip stitch into one of those bars on the back of the flower, pull up a loop, clip the yarn, pull up that loop, and tighten it up on the back. Whoops, they're so little, they're kind of fiddly. Now then, let's go ahead and pull our center closed completely. This center could also be made with a slip ring, and that would make it smaller. So let's go ahead with our threaded yarn needle and just do the center to keep it from opening up on us. And the way I do that is I go around again. I go in those stitches underneath them, and I go around again and pull it under the stitches again. And pull it closed. That should do it. And then I just try to go through the fibers again. It's getting kind of tight. All right, so you get the idea. I'd probably go one more time and clip it. Another thing that I'm doing to the back of these flowers oftentimes, and I'm going to do it right now, is I tie a double knot. So left over right and right over left, because it's not going to show in the application that I'm going to use it for, because these will be stitched down to another base. I'll deal with the other color at a different time, but that is our little 5-petal vinca. And look, comparatively with the 4.5 millimeter, it is much smaller, and it's really not that. Sometimes if you use a smaller hook than what's recommended, the piece gets real rigid, but it's no more rigid than this one is. So you can see the size is smaller by using the 4.5 millimeter crochet hook. Okay, let's go on to the next flower. For this next vinca, I want to start with my baby pink in the center. And I want to begin with a double slip ring. And the reason for that is I want to create a smaller center so that we can show a comparison of the difference in the center size when we use a chain versus a slip ring. I've tried using the single slip ring and it won't stay closed. And in fact, when I tried to close it, I actually broke the yarn. So I'm going to use a double slip ring so that we can create a smaller center. And to do a double slip ring, put your yarn between your index finger and your middle finger. Form a 2. And wrap the yarn where you have 2 loops and a tail. So you have actually 3 total loops. Insert the hook under the 2 loops, pull that loop that's closest to the knuckle of your finger, and pull up a loop and remove it from your finger. And now you have a double slip ring. Chain 1, 2, and 3 for the first stitch. The first chain counts as a single crochet, and then a chain up of 2. Single crochet, whoops. Let's do that again. Single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. Now let's see what we have. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4 I'm going to go ahead and chain 2 and insert my hook into the very first chain. And then I'm going to close my slip ring. This is a little fiddly. There we go. Now I'm going to close that slip ring. And with a double slip ring, it takes pulling 2 times, because the first time you're going to pull the 2 loops together, and I put my fingernail in there. It's not going to work today, so I'm going to insert another crochet hook into that center and pull, and you'll see in a moment, there it goes. It pulls, and then it'll pull the rest of the way. And then pull it again and close the ring completely. The beautiful thing about a double slip ring is it usually doesn't open back up for any reason, but we'll test it today. All right, now we want to slip stitch, making sure to go through all of the, we want to slip stitch to join. All right. So that's our flower center with our 5 chains. Now pull up, chain 1 again and pull up a loop and clip the yarn back here. And then pull that loop through, and before you pull it tight, pull it to the back. And then it's on the back, not on the front of your work. And that's what we want. Okay? Now then, I will deal with those yarn ends later. Let's get to our petals. Now on this petal, I'm going to do both the whirl effect as well as I'm going to put the little picot. So we're going to learn 2 more techniques all in one flower. Begin with a slip knot on the hook. And go into any of the chain spaces to begin. I don't go into the one where I left off because there's too much bulk there already. So I move over a couple and then go in. Make sure you're in between the chain space. And slip stitch to join the yarn. You want as little bulk as possible because you have a lot of stitches that need to go in this small chain space. Chain 2 counts as a single double crochet, and double crochet, but don't finish it. We're going to double crochet 2 together. Actually, we're going to double crochet 3 together, because this chain counts as one that goes with it. All right, here we go. Now begin your double crochet again, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. We have 3 loops on the hook. Now this is just a double crochet 2 together. We want to double crochet 3 together. So yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through all 4 loops on the hook, chain 2. This is the picot. And then come back in the one bar of the first chain, pull up a loop and slip stitch. Now in any other project, these 3 double crochet together would count as 1 stitch, but today I'm going to count them as the 3 stitches because we want 2 more double crochet in here. 2 more. 1 and 2. If you need to fold down your center to work your petal, that's fine. Now notice that we have achieved the petal and it extends wider than the chain space that we created. And that's what's going to help get this whirly effect where they overlap on one another. Okay, we're going to do the same thing that we did last. We're not going to, we are going to chain 2. That's actually our 7th double crochet. Slip stitch into that petal, that chain space, chain 1, pull up a loop, and now we're looking for the next chain space. And pull that loop through to the front, just like we did on the previous flower. All right, chain 2. Now we're going to do our double crochet 3 together. Yarn over, insert the hook, pull up a loop. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Repeat that again. Yarn over, insert the hook into the chain space, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. There's 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over, insert the hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, 4 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops, chain 2 to form the picot, and then back into the 1 post of the first chain, slip stitch, now 2 more double crochet. Because we're crowding those stitches, it'll help this little gap, it doesn't show as much when you get all of those stitches in there because it's crowded. But we want that. And chain 2 and slip stitch into the chain space. All right. Chain 1, pull up a loop, and into the chain space. Pull through the loop. Chain 2. Now we're going to double crochet our 3 together. Yarn over, insert the hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. 2 loops on the hook. Yarn over, insert the hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Now you have 3 loops on the hook. Repeat. Yarn over, insert the hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. 4 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops, chain 2. Slip stitch into the bar of the first chain. Double crochet 2. Chain 2, slip stitch into the petal. Oops, that's a lot going on there in that chain space, but that's what we need. Now you'll notice the crowding, the petals are beginning to overlap, and they will continue to do it more as we get the last 2 petals in. Repeat the pattern, repeat for the petal 2 more times. Let me try that again. That chain was too big. Oh, my tension loosened up. That's chain 1, chain 2. Slip stitch back into the petal. My yarn split. But that's crocheting. It happens to me. It happens to me too. Part of the reason for the yarn splitting is the hook is smaller than recommended. If you have that problem with a particular yarn, you might find that moving up a size or so with your crochet hook, the splitting stops. Chain 2. Repeat the final petal. Okay, now I've completed my petal. I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to do the same thing I did on the previous flower, and I'm going to fold down the first petal and find a loop close by, probably not where I attached the yarn. I'm going to find a loop close by and insert the hook, pull through a loop, pull that loop up and cut the yarn, pull that loop through, and tighten it up. All right, this worked very well. This is an adorable little whirly flower, and that's exactly what we wanted. Now I'm going to tighten up my center one more time because he did open a tiny bit, but you notice just like what I wanted to happen. Yeah, that tightened up well. I'm going to tie the center in a knot again. And whenever I clip the yarn, I get as close to the knot as possible, but you need to turn the blade away from your work to clip it so you don't cut into your project. Okay, I'll take care of the pink one later. But I did accomplish a smaller center, and I got my whirligig going on my flower. Got to kind of adjust him a little bit to make him do what you want him to do. But that's exactly what we wanted for this flower. Notice how much smaller this center is. I really like this flower. This is my favorite. And this one too. And there we have it. We have our 5-petal vinkas with our small center. We learned today how to make the petals overlap to form kind of a whirl. We learned how to add a center that has a much smaller. And in fact, for the remainder of these flowers, when I make them, I'm probably going to use this. I like this better. I think it is much prettier. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. I am having a blast bringing this series of flowers. If you're enjoying it as much as I am, I'd really appreciate you giving me a like. It will really help me to grow this channel. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so and activate that notification bell so you'll know every time I put up a new tutorial. This month, I'm going to put up at least one every single day. Be kind. Spread kindness everywhere you go. And until I see you again, keep calm and crochet on.